this video, we will see how to set up our environment. So let's begin. Now before we go ahead with Ubuntu installation, we may have to download a couple of files and install a software to set up our environment. As I have been promising you, we will set up the Linux in such a way that it will not disturb your current operating system. This is only possible if we make our Linux virtual. What does that mean? Well, it means that we will install a software named VirtualBox on our PC or laptop. After we launch the VirtualBox software, we install Linux within the VirtualBox software. So how much ever we play with Linux, it would be within the VirtualBox. And as per your Windows or your Mac OS is concerned, it is just running a software called VirtualBox. How is it possible to install an entire OS within a single software application? Well, it is possible because VirtualBox as an application creates a complete virtual PC. It has its own RAM, hard disk, DVD-ROM, etc. Of course, all of these are virtual in nature, but good enough for us to install Linux and start using it. The technical terminology here is, your actual operating system is known as the host OS, and the operating system within the VirtualBox is called as guest OS. So in my case, Mac OS is the host operating system, Ubuntu Linux is the guest operating system. Having said that, if you are aware of Linux or Unix environment and you want to complete an actual installation of Linux on your PC without the virtual setup, then you are welcome to do so. Just ensure that you are aware of all the important settings. In our case, apart from VirtualBox, we will also need to download a Linux installation file. Since we'll be using Ubuntu as our Linux OS, we will need an Ubuntu ISO file. But should we only use these two? Don't we have any other alternatives? We certainly have plenty of alternative softwares here. For creating a virtual environment, you can use Oracle's VirtualBox, which we are using right now, or VMware's Workstation or VMware's Fusion, QEMU, Portable VirtualBox, Parallels Desktop, or some other alternatives. We already have seen a lot of names for Unix and Linux distributions in our previous video. Summing up the more common ones, Ubuntu, Linux Mint, Zorin OS, CentOS, SUSE Linux, Elementary OS, etc. Our choice of software installation for this particular video would be VirtualBox for virtual environment and Ubuntu as our Linux operating system. So let us begin by downloading these softwares. So let me open up a browser over here and type in virtualbox.org, which takes me to the Oracle's VirtualBox site here. I can click on this huge icon in the center of the page for downloading VirtualBox. This takes me to another page where I have the option for downloading this software for either Windows or OS X. Now OS X is for Mac OS based operating systems. I can also download and install VirtualBox in Linux, but that's not our intention, is it? Our intention is that we download the VirtualBox on Windows OS or on Mac OS and put a Linux inside the VirtualBox. Since my machine is Mac OS, I'll click on OS X. It asks me that do I allow this download to happen? I allow that, and while this is getting downloaded, I'll open up another tab and go to ubuntu.com. And here I go into the Downloads tab. It offers me to download the Ubuntu 20. There are a couple of versions here, 20.04 and 20.1. Different versions, but essentially it is the main version number 20 which counts. At the time of this recording, 20 was the latest version. Well, it may have been upgraded to a different version while you're watching it. Actually, anything beyond 16 would do. So pick up the version of your choice and click on it to download. This will begin the download for an ISO file. Now once your downloads are done, you can install VirtualBox on your Mac. It is pretty straightforward. However, installing Ubuntu Linux may be slightly tedious. So let's look at that process. Now that we have installed the VirtualBox, let us launch it on our desktop. This is how the interface looks like. I am going to click on the blue icon over here, which stands for New. This will help me create a new virtual machine. I can give it any name, not necessarily the name of the OS. Nevertheless, I'll call it Ubuntu. And I'll click on Continue. Next, it takes me to a pop-up screen where I have to decide how much of RAM or memory to be assigned to my virtual Linux. Since the idea is that it is going to operate like a complete OS, we cannot afford to keep it too less. And in any case, it cannot go beyond the actual RAM of the host machine. It says that the recommended is 1024 MB, which is 1 GB. If you are not going to do any extensive task in your Linux system, then I think 1 GB should do. Since I have an adequate RAM on my MacBook, I will choose 4 GB for my virtual machine. Please note that this RAM will be dedicated to the virtual machine only while it is running. For the rest of the times, the entire RAM belongs to my host machine. The next screen asks me whether it should create a virtual hard disk, and I'll click on Create. Then click on the default VDI, Virtual Disk Image, and click on Continue. This hard disk or hard drive can either be of fixed size or can dynamically increase as and when we keep using more space. It is good to keep it dynamic in nature. After clicking Continue, next screen asks me how much of hard disk do I want to start with. Default is 10 GB and can go large based on your host machine. Though 10 GB will also do, I recommend 20 GB. Once I click on Create, the pop-up will end because we have chosen the necessary basic configurations. However, I can tweak this furthermore if required by clicking on this orange icon, Settings. This pops up in a new window. I see a lot of tabs here like General, System, Storage, Audio, etc. I'll click on Display and optionally increase my video memory to get a better viewing experience. As I said, this is optional and you can explore many of such settings on your own. However, couple of settings that I strongly recommend are 1. Click on the Systems tab and then on Advanced and increase the number of your CPUs. This is to say, if you have an efficient host laptop or PC at home with a smart CPU, then why don't we extend its capabilities to the virtual machine as well? I chose 4 CPUs as my host MacBook can support only 4. You can choose 2 or keep it 1 for now. These can be changed at a later time too. Second setting that I strongly recommend is click on the General tab and then click on Advanced. Here you see 2 options. Shared clipboard, which is disabled. If it is enabled, then it lets you copy some text from your host to guest and vice versa. So I am going to enable it by making it bidirectional. Also, let us enable drag and drop. Let me click on OK to end these advanced settings. Now that these preliminaries have been taken care of, let us get to installing the actual operating system. Click on Ubuntu, which opens a pop-up. I am supposed to choose the installation ISO file here. So I'll click on this tiny folder icon, which asks me as to where to get the ISO file from. Well, since we have already downloaded the Ubuntu ISO file, I'll click on Add, then browse to the folder where I have downloaded. Once it starts showing on my screen here, I will select it and click on Choose, and then click on Start. This opens another window, which eventually will become our Linux world. Do not try to resize it because that will not work. Please bear with the tiny window until all the installations have been done. I know the font size might be quite small, but I will not try to play around with the sizes for now. I will minimize the VirtualBox main app. Now it is checking the disks. Once it finishes checking and finds our downloaded files with no errors, it may move ahead. There may be some pop-ups which ask for certain permissions. I'll go ahead and click on OK. It finally takes me to a purplish screen. This will automatically open yet another window, where you get to choose whether you want to try Ubuntu or probably go ahead and install it. Before we click on Install, we can choose our preferred language from the left side of the screen. and then click on install. No, not done yet. We have some more strings to resolve. The keyboard layout. I will keep the default as English US. Click on continue. Now there is a question about, do I need a normal installation or a very basic one? I'll choose the normal installation. Also below, it asks whether I should let it download the updates while it installs. I probably will let that happen. It takes the internet from my host machine. This icon right here with two computers, if they do not have a cross symbol, means that we have an active internet connection even within my VirtualBox. Let me click on continue. Next, it gives me a warning about erasing the hard disk. Since it is virtual, it won't make a difference. So I'll choose it and click on install now. Finally, the installation should start, isn't it? No, wait, yet another screen, which asks me, where am I? Well, choose your place and time zone. I will choose Denver and click on continue. Next, it wants to know who am I. I am John Doe. The computer's name, that is the name of the Linux, can be anything of your choice. It just cannot have special characters like an apostrophe, so I cannot name it as John's Gadget or something. I will call it as KHUT, Knowledge Hut. Next, choose a wise password, cause it says that mine is weak. Whenever I boot Linux later on, do I want to enter the password or log in automatically? I don't think so. John will have too many confidential stuff to begin with, so I'll just select login automatically. Finally, it starts the installation. This will take few minutes. You can either get yourself a cup of coffee, or take the garbage out, or maybe just read the interesting tidbits about how to use Ubuntu, which keep scrolling on the screen. Once the installations are done, it asks my permission to restart and I'll click on the same. You can press enter after this and it will finally boot my Linux. If you have not chosen to log in automatically, it will ask for your password. Not in my case. It will take me now to the Ubuntu desktop. Oh, I can see the purplish desktop here with few icons on the left. Let me enjoy the moment. Short-lived joy. A pop-up comes immediately. I'll just click on next. Do you want to improve Ubuntu? I certainly do, but not by sending my system info. I'll keep on clicking next until I reach the done page. There are a lot of applications installed within Linux, but the icons on the left are the default favorites. It can be configured later on. It's a very tiny screen, isn't it? Well, you cannot resize the window this way. What we can certainly do is right-click on desktop and open display settings. Choose the resolution of our choice, click on apply and keep the changes. You see, there are a lot of options here. Choose the one which works best for you. Let me close this. I can also install more apps by clicking on Ubuntu software here. It's like the Play Store or the App Store. The third tab here shows if there are any updates pending. You can choose to update all now or maybe later. Ooh, that was quite some installation, isn't it? But guess what? It is finally done. You can power off the system if you wish to. You can always launch it again from the VirtualBox. So now we are ready to step into our desktop and embrace the Linux operating system. In the next module, we will take a dip into the Linux by exploring the Linux command line.